Okay, first up, let us start with the solubility of salts as an introduction. Now, when we talk about solubility of salts, we're talking about whether it's able to dissolve in water. So we talk about the solubility. Now, there are only two cases here. We talk about whether it is soluble in water or whether in water. So what are some of the examples of salts which are soluble in water? On the left-hand side here, all the things on the left, these are your soluble salts. Those on the right are your insoluble salts. Okay? Now, first up, let's look at sodium, potassium, ammonium, group 1. Okay, these are what we call your sparse salts. So any salts that contain sodium, potassium, or ammonium, they will be soluble. The other type of salts, in this case we saw other group 1 metals, they will be considered as your lithium, rubidium, cesium, francium. These are the 4 other group 1 metals which, when they form a compound, it will be soluble in water. So lithium salts, rubidium salts, cesium salt, francium salts, all of these salts will be soluble in water. Now, what are the other salts which are soluble in water? We talk about nitrates. Okay, all nitrates are soluble. So in this case here, whenever you see the word nitrate, that means it can dissolve in water. Or every single nitrate will be able to dissolve in water. Just remember that. Okay, now the other type of salts you will learn is also known as your chlorides. Okay, chlorides. Now, are all chlorides soluble? The answer is no. Okay, it is not all chlorides. So we say here all chlorides are soluble except for these two examples. So whatever chloride, every single one of them are soluble except for lead 2 chloride and silver chloride. These are the only two exceptions. Okay, so just remember, all chlorides are soluble except for which two? Lead 2 chloride, silver chloride. Next up, we have our sulfates. All sulfates are soluble. Okay, except, once again, you can see the word except. Okay, except what? Except for 3 of them. Lead 2 sulfate, barium sulfate, and calcium sulfate. These 3 sulfates are considered insoluble. So in actual fact, all the salts, I would say, all the salts are soluble except for lead 2 chloride, silver chloride. These 2 are in the chloride family, and 3 of them from the sulfate family, which is lead 2 sulfate, barium sulfate, and calcium sulfate. So there are only 5 exceptions with regards to salts. So in actual fact, everything above this, actually, anything which are your nitrates, which are your chlorides, which are sulfates, these are your salts. And you need to learn which are the ones which are soluble, which are the ones which are not soluble. For those below here, okay, carbonate, hydroxide, and oxide, just take note. Let's cancel this here. Sorry, wrong one. Okay, let's cancel the oxide here. Oops. Oh my. Let's pause. Okay, now you can see here that we have potassium carbonate, sodium carbonate, ammonium carbonate, sodium, potassium, ammonium hydroxide and oxide, calcium oxide, barium oxide. Now, this, okay, is another solubility that you remember. Now, first up, before we start, let's cancel this thing over here. Cancel this thing over here. Oops. Okay, yes. Okay, just take note, for calcium and barium, cancel off the oxides because the oxides are actually insoluble. Wait, it's gone. Okay, so the oxides are actually insoluble. So now, all carbonates are insoluble except for if you look at it carefully, it's actually SPA, sodium, potassium, ammonium. The other one is, if you look carefully again, all oxides, all hydroxides are insoluble once again, except for SPA. Okay? All are insoluble except for SPA, plus calcium hydroxide plus barium hydroxide. So only the hydroxides for calcium and barium are soluble. The rest of the hydroxides and oxides, they are all insoluble. So the one before, for the salts, we learned which of them are soluble. Then we learn the exceptions which are insoluble, because there are so few exceptions. Okay, there are so few salts which are insoluble. However, for the carbonates and the oxides, almost all of them are insoluble except for SPA carbonate, SPA oxide and hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, barium hydroxide. So you can look at the table here and learn by the exceptions. Okay, I say again, learn by the exceptions. So it's all carbonate, once again, except all hydroxide and oxides except following. Now, let's try some examples. Okay, let's try some examples. So take the time now to go and try it out. In the next video, I'll let you know which are the answers.